Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's session. My name is Josh Itzo. I am a co-founder and chief strategy officer at Greenspring Advisors, and I'm really excited today to have John McAuliffe and Emily Levitt from Sylvan Learning as part of our discussion and featured speakers today. We're going to be discussing just reimagining school support for employees in this period of COVID-19 and virtual learning and stay at home orders and such. John is the CEO of Sylvan Learning, and Emily is the VP of Education, and they've got I think some really great perspectives in terms of how we as employers can support the people that work with us and work for us, and working parents and working families. Obviously, there's lots of challenges that we have with kind of this repeat of what happened in the spring. I think most people, I have 4 kids, I would say that the spring was pretty challenging from a learning perspective, as all of us who have kids were really thrust into not just being employees and workers, but also being teachers in some way, shape, or form to our kids. And obviously, we were hoping that wasn't going to be the case come fall, but this is where we find ourselves. And so as employers, when you start to think about your workforce, having your employees, when they are having to do their work, they're also having to, teach their kids, provide support from that perspective as well. It can lead to a lot of different things that ultimately have an impact on them as individuals and on our businesses. It can create, mental stress and frustration. It can create financial stress. And those things have a really clear, I think, impact on things like engagement, alignment, productivity. And so today we're going to be talking about what some of those challenges look like and some solutions that Sylvan have created to be able to support working families and working parents in this time, and really the role that employers can play in being able to deliver these solutions. So with that, I want to introduce John and Emily, and I'm going to hand it over to them. We've got a couple of slides to work through, but this is really going to be more conversational. There should be a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you do have questions, if you want to submit those, and then we will try to address as many as we can at the end of the session. So thanks again for attending, and John and Emily, I'll hand it off to you, but it would be really helpful perhaps for those of attendees who don't know who Sylvan is, if maybe you could give just a little brief background about who you are and what you do.
Sure, Josh. Hello, everybody. I'm John McAuliffe. As Josh said, I'm the CEO of Sylvan Learning. And I have Emily Levitt, who's our VP of Education. We're going to tag team this presentation. We won't take a long time going through the presentation. Our goal isn't to bore you, it's to answer your questions. As many of you know, if you're parents, it's very uncertain times, and we understand that as well as anybody, and I think we have some interesting solutions. But let me start by just giving you a little bit of background on Sylvan. We've been in business for 40 years. We're the world's leading supplemental education firm. Almost all of our 40 years has been here in the Baltimore region. We're currently located in Hunt Valley, Maryland. We've served over 7 million families since the beginning. We're a franchisor, and we have both a national and international presence. We have about 750 points of presence between our centers and our satellite locations, with all but 5 of them owned by franchisees. Significant presence in the United States and Canada, but we also have centers in the Middle East, Hong Kong, and Vietnam. So we have grown internationally over the years. One of the things that's interesting about Sylvan as compared to our competition is really our breadth of content. We have the ability to deliver tutoring in the areas of reading, math, study skills, writing, homework help, test prep, and even STEM programs that really differentiates us from our competition. Emily, if we could go on to the next 2 more pages on, if that would be easy enough. I think one more forward. I think almost all of us have experienced this virus situation. Obviously, it's created a complete disruption in almost everybody's life, but the education world, it's probably been even more extreme is in terms of a disruption. If you go back, as Josh said, and you look at just last spring, where virtually overnight we had to go from a situation where kids were in school to being attending school virtually. The systems, quite honestly, weren't prepared. I'm not sure they should have been. I don't think anybody could have anticipated a pandemic. But anyway, for the teachers, there wasn't a lot of guidance or training. Same with the parents and the students. They had to try to pull things together very quickly. And I think that added to the anxiety. The technology accessibility was a big issue, in particular in urban situations. Student engagement became a big concern, not only for parents, but for teachers. Some of the rules around how you do that were just really undefined at the time. And probably the ones in a weird way that most affected were probably the parents. Whether you were an essential employee and had to go to work, or whether you were working from home, you had to take on significant new roles in your life. They included being a teacher, a babysitter, and an entertainer to a degree, and somebody that helped your children with homework. And that added enormous amounts of stress to families during this time frame. Obviously, with us being in the education world, we heard lots from parents. And as a result, Emily and her team came up with a new service for Sylvan that we call School Support at Sylvan. And it was specifically designed to address that need that parents have. And the reason it's become, I think, so important as school is going back, first of all, over half the districts in the United States are going back either virtually or in a hybrid fashion. And in Maryland, I think all of them are going back, at least in the beginning, virtually. It created a lot of concern among employers in regards to productivity, the employee's ability to focus some time and attention on work while they had the stress of making sure that their children were getting educated in a proper way. So what I'm going to have Emily do right now is walk us through a little bit of the school support services, and then I'll come back and talk about what some of the employers that we work with are doing.
Great, thank you. So this entire year has been really personal for all of us, myself included, because not only are there great concerns around education, of which I've been a part for 30 years, but I'm also a parent. I have two small kids in elementary school, and trying to juggle all of that and work and keep an eye on the state of education in the U.S. has been quite the challenge this year. So I really feel for working parents and how much support they need. They really need more than they've ever needed. So with that in mind, we started School Support at Sylvan, and it's an in-person support solution for parents who are working, and they need someone to help guide their students through their school work day, so the parents can also make sure the children are taken care of and their academics are taken care of in a way that still allows the parents to do their jobs. So on virtual school days, our learning centers will be providing a place for students to get personal one-on-one support from our tutors to help them in a few areas. So give them a sense of normalcy, a schedule, a place to go every day that's not, the dining room table, and have someone there who can really coach them through what they're supposed to do at school. That will include things like logging them into their online classes, making sure they're online on time. If there are any online materials they have to access, making sure the students can find the materials, that homework gets done and turned in, because having to turn things in through a school's learning management system is a little different from just handing a teacher a piece of paper. And we also wanted to make sure that our support was really flexible and really personalized. So we have a lot of supports built in to help not only the students, but to help the parents as well. One of the things that we always earn high praise for as a service is our flexibility. And this year, I feel like it's been appreciated even more so. So John, I'm gonna hand it back to you for a minute to talk about what we've been doing to help employers.
Sure. So for 41 of our 41 and a half years, we were really a business to consumer marketer, where it was consumers who came to Sylvan for the services. With the advent of with the virus and what's happening with schools going back virtually, we've actually had a huge number of organizations actually approach us over the last several months to see if we couldn't put together some packages for them that would work for their employees. Right now, they fall into two big categories. The first, and where we have the vast majority of our employers that we're working with, we have set up school support services, as Emily described, and a number of other services that they could avail themselves of. And we've tried to discount these prices very significantly for a couple of reasons. One, for the most part, our centers are not necessarily used during the day, during the school year. In the summer they are, but most of the tutoring takes place at night. This allows us to look at this very incrementally in terms of what the cost is. And so we've been able to put in some very reduced prices that if you come in for a typical Sylvan program, we'll give you 20% off. If you come in for school support services, as Emily described, in the early part of the day, it ends up being around $15 or $20 an hour. Which is a very discounted price. And then obviously people could avail themselves of any of the other services that Sylvan provides. So that's predominantly what we've done, and we're generally now listed on employees' benefit pages, and they have materials and the ability to access Sylvan for these services. A number of companies.
And John, is really as a voluntary benefit in that scenario.
Yes, it is. Yep. It's all paid by the employee there. On in a number of cases, companies actually have come to us and said they want to subsidize that service. Some all the way up to a 3/4 subsidy for the service that we provide. And in those instances, we've set up the school support services for them, and we give them both weekly and monthly rates that are even more discounted because of the fact that the kids would be taking up a seat for that period of time. And that's probably, in the subsidized situations is where we've seen the most activity here in the early days. Most school systems will start after Labor Day. There's some exceptions to that across the country, but we see that the activity is picking up pretty dramatically as we get closer to that date. We've also had a number of not franchisees, I apologize, companies come to us, and they didn't necessarily want the in-center services, maybe because of convenience or whatever, but we have provided them virtual homework help options. So we're trying really hard to make sure that we're listening and addressing the needs of the employers out there, so that their families and their employees can stay productive during this difficult time. And with that, I'll hand it back to Emily. I'll talk a little bit about some of the materials we have that we can either get to you if you have an interest, and I think you're also going to talk about how to create an environment at home that's as conducive as possible.
Sure. We do have a lot of content to support employees, not just the marketing collateral for our services, but we have a lot of online resources that will give parents a sense of, how to make their school home lives a little easier, how to manage everything, how to provide their students with as much support as possible without everyone going crazy in the process. So we have a lot of different ways to communicate out to employees in all different forms and fashions. So tips, resources, webinars, we've started recording a few podcasts, and all of that is easy to find and really a good wealth of information for everyone. In terms of advice to all of you who are listening today, I would give, if you're in this boat where you have school-age kids at home and you're looking at starting on Tuesday and you're not really sure what to do, to make it as painless as possible, I would start with 3 tips. The first would be get a master schedule together. And that would be not just the kids' school and where they're supposed to be, but also where are you supposed to be? Because if you have younger students, they're going to need you to find, resources online, make sure they're logged in on time, and they know the meeting codes and everything else they're supposed to know. So you might find that you are ducking into your kids' schooling in the middle of the day while you're also trying to work. So overlay your work schedule on top of the kids' schedule and see where everyone's going to need you and when. And then if at all possible, try to plan some breaks where everyone can take at least a half an hour at the same time to touch base and, connect and get a break, especially from the screens. Tip number 2 would be make sure that there is a dedicated learning space in the home for your children. It doesn't necessarily have to be a permanent space. A lot of dining room tables are doing double duty as school this year and last year. But just make sure that it's stocked with supplies, it has good Wi-Fi access and outlets and any materials your kids might need. You can probably get a little better buy-in from them if you have them help you decorate it or ask them to make it themselves if they're old enough to do that, and really let them make it their own so that they'll enjoy being there and they'll have everything they need to do. And the third thing I would say is find a good path for communication for yourself and your student in the school. As Josh and John were mentioning before, things are going to change a lot this year. I think, the beginning of last week, we thought we were all out of school for public school until January 29th. And then we found out maybe we can go back sooner. So things are going to change a lot. They're going to change often. And so knowing how to contact your child's school or the teacher is paramount. Also make sure you know how to get into your child's learning management system. Some schools will give the parents their own login, or you can use your own you can use your child's login. That way you can have access to assignments, the teacher's contact information, any kind of expectations the teacher has for your kids for the year, and know when to contact the teachers. They're going to be extraordinarily busy, just like the rest of us are. And so they might have a window where they can get back to you, and just kind of know where that window is so that you have clear communication expectations. And last but not least, I would say just approach the fall with a lot of grace and patience, and just know that it's going to be difficult for everyone, but there are a lot of resources out there to help you, and we'd be honored to help you take advantage of those.
All right, thanks, Emily. With that, that's really our presentation. We'd like to open it up to any questions. We want to thank Josh for inviting us to participate in this webinar. We love talking about education. Obviously, we love talking about Sylvan. But we'd like to answer any questions that you may have anywhere around the education landscape, and in particular around going back to school and the experiences you're having or the struggles that you're dealing with.
Great. So here's a question. What are you seeing in terms of the partners? I think you said you've got 40 plus partners, and I think on one of the slides we saw some pretty big names there. What are you seeing just in terms of best practices for employers in terms of how they're approaching assessing either the need or the interest for these types of solutions within their workforce? Have any of these partners kind of shared the way that they're either getting the word out, so communication wise, or evaluating whether or not this is something that their people would see value in?
Right. So most of the firms that have contacted us actually had done surveys of their employees. Most of these initiatives came out of the HR department as they listened to concerns of the different employees and the issues that they were dealing with, and they ended up doing surveys. Some similar, one local client is RCM&D. They also did a survey. We had actually talked to them. We went to them as part of our local outreach here and introduced them to this service. They followed up with a survey, and I think it's pretty amazing that the employees with children, I don't want to use the word scared, but there's so much uncertainty out there that I think they are looking for opportunities to help them, not only during the school hours. Okay, I think that's probably the most dramatic need at this point, because parents are trying to work or have to go to work if they're an essential employee, and they want to make sure that their kids are getting everything they can out of the tutoring in the school that's going on. But they're also concerned about the ability for the kids to engage, grasp, and learn as well under this environment as they may have under an in-school environment. And that's why we have a lot of companies coming to us for the virtual homework support help. One of the big companies that got in touch with us was Bright Horizons. Obviously, they're in the business of providing care, generally child care for these large employers. They saw a need also, and many of the larger companies are actually coming through that relationship that we have with Bright Horizons.
That's great. We've actually got some really good questions coming through. So could you talk a little bit about Sylvan's COVID-19 protocols for the in-person services, and how are you guys addressing things like social distancing? So that's obviously probably a question, a concern that parents and employers would have. How do you guys approach that in order to create a safe environment for the students?
Right. I'll have Emily address that, and then I'll add a little bit at the end.
Okay. So we follow all the CDC guidelines and then go beyond that. So all the students are required, and staff, to have a temperature check when they enter. And then everyone has to have a mask the entire time they're in the centers. We keep the student-teacher ratio very small. If they're here for school support, we have groups no larger than 6. And if they're there for a traditional 3-to-1 tutoring, then obviously the groups are even smaller. We also have a plexiglass barrier between staff and students, and then we wipe down all the centers, the tables, the materials, the supplies, everything constantly. So cleanliness is very, very important to us, and I feel confident enough in what we do that I'll be sending my own children there starting next week.
So the only thing I really add to what Emily said is the fact that we go beyond really what the requirements are. We've been in the kid business for so long, and safety has always been a top priority of ours. So we're not as far away from this as you might think. It wasn't that big a leap for us. It was taking some of the health and safety guidelines and trying to implement them. All of our centers are running at half capacity or less at this point, just to make sure that the social distancing is adhered to. So I feel pretty good. I joke that we're trying to make it as normal as possible for a child, or as normal as possible as you can make it with a plastic shield in front of you. So it's a different world, but we can't suffer the consequences of an outbreak or something like that happening. So we're extra careful.
And can you just, I think that maybe Emily, you talked about it, but just in terms of probably a 2-part question. One is, how do you staff both, I would say, at the corporate owned, because you do have the franchisee model. I know in Maryland, I think you've got maybe, is it 4 centers that are corporately owned, and then you've got a national footprint around the country with franchisees, correct?
That's correct.
So how are you staffing? What are some of the qualifications of the teachers and the support staff and the coaches?
Sure.
Number one, and then can you just address again or touch on what the ratio of kind of adult to student looks like?
Sure. The requirements that we have for the teachers and tutors haven't changed among COVID. We always have pretty high standards for that. If for students who are coming in for math or reading remediation, the teachers have to be certified teachers. They, not college students or, folks like that, they have to be certified teachers. If students are coming to us for homework help or SAT, ACT prep or things like that, and now school support at Sylvan is in this group as well, they have to be in education, pass a background check. They have to have a very good resume, but they don't necessarily have to have that credential, because in that role, they're serving more as a coach than a teacher. So those credentials are always high. We always do the background checks and make sure that we really have good quality people in the center. And then in terms of student-teacher ratio, it depends a little bit on what the students are coming to us for. So if they need that intensive remediation, the groups will be 3 students to a teacher, sometimes less, depending on the center setup, especially now that social distancing has come into play. And then for school support and some of our group classes, we're looking at more 6-to-1.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add, and it's in the safety area, in school support, there will always be at least 2 adults in the center.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Thanks. Yeah.
That's helpful. Could you talk a little bit more about the process that you engage in to align really kind of the students' kind of curriculum and then the support that you offer? So how do you,
Sure.
let's just say you've got 3 kids that all go to different schools and have
Yeah.
different curriculums, and you've got, call it one instructor or one person that's kind of engaging.
Right.
What's that process look like, and
Yeah.
how does that work?
That's our specialty area, actually. We have centers all over, so we have to make sure that we're prepared to provide good, solid support that will be applicable to what the kids need to know, no matter where they live. So for the programs that we offer for our curricula, it's all based around a foundation of Common Core standards, because 41 states are still using Common Core. And then after that, we look at, all right, for the states that aren't Common Core and for Canadian provinces and things like that, where are the gaps, if there's any, between, when you compare them. And so we add those in to make sure that we have full coverage. And then after that, we look at the child's needs. So they come to us, they take an assessment, we figure out where their skill gaps are, and then we build an individual program just for that child. So that's our traditional service. For school support, the students will be actually working on their schoolwork with us. So we won't be giving them any new content or new material. It's the teacher walking them through what the school is giving them. So there's no alignment work to be done there, really, because we have them log right into their work.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful. One of the things I've started to see is that a lot of local businesses, and this is, around the Baltimore area, I suspect it's around, around the country as well, but you've got, places like Sky Zone, which is like the trampoline park. And you've got, I think I read an article about, a local mall is like opening up like a gathering spot. It looks like a lot of these small businesses that have facilities are trying to pivot and meet kind of this need. And just interested in your thoughts and perspectives on that, what you think maybe for employers, employees, some of the potential drawbacks would be around just kind of a physical facility to go to, as opposed to more of a kind of a specialized learning environment.
I can probably start on that, and Emily will correct me wherever I go wrong. Yes, we've been approached by a number of these companies to try and partner together in something similar. I think there's a difference in what we're trying to offer. Number one, we already provide supplemental education. We understand the education business. Our centers are set up to provide tutoring. So it's already there. It's not like you have to change the facility. We already have access to the teachers because they were already delivering services in our center. So I think we're probably uniquely qualified to provide that service with the combination of educational expertise. The content, by the way, to supplement, if a child's, one of the things about this, if a child's struggling a little bit, and we'll see evidence of that during the school support, we have the expertise to be able to go in and help a little bit in regards to that, to make sure the engagement's there and the learning is there. So that's why we think we're very different than some of these other environments that might be looking to provide this. They're more of a, this is not negative. I don't want it to be negative. They're more of a babysitter. We're more of an educator. Emily, I don't know if you want to add something to that.
No, I would agree. We have heard from a lot of organizations like that, trying to incorporate the maybe athletic activities or other things like that with the academic. And they're very prepared to be able to offer the athletic, but they're kind of at a loss what to do when it comes to the academic. And during this time, parents need more than that. So we're happy to provide the education, because that's what we do.
They have to make a leap to provide this service, in my opinion. We don't have to make a leap. This is our bailiwick. This is what we do every single day.
Right. What about programs or focus areas do you offer for maybe kids that are more academically advanced, so like a gifted and talented program or anything like that? What do you guys do to support students from that perspective?
when we're talking about school support and the children are in a gifted and talented class, we'll be helping them with their gifted and talented work that the school is giving them. So that part, you know, we can take care of. And then for other students who are looking for extra enrichment activities, we have a few things that we offer to help with, like math acceleration. Writing is always something that kids need because they don't get a lot of writing assigned to them at school these days. So we have a really strong writing program that I always recommend. And our STEM courses are very hands-on, very fun, and they're open to anyone who wants to take them. So we have a lot of advanced kids in those courses as well.
So the one thing I'd add, Emily, maybe you could go into a little bit more depth. The way our program works, Josh, with you know, typical program, not necessarily school support. You come in, you take an assessment, you get an individualized learning plan. That works whether you're behind in school or you want to get way ahead in school, because your goals become part of that. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Emily.
Yeah. We always want to make sure that we know where do the parents want their child to be, where can we help you take them? And so we can build a program that is specific to that. And our curriculum is adaptive. So as long as we can find a placement level for the student, which we do with the assessment, then we can take the student as far as they want to go, because our content will adapt and adjust to the student's ability level the longer they're with us with our traditional programs. Yeah.
And what are the hours, just centers of the hours that you guys are typically open?
Well, generally, we'd be open till 9 to about probably about 8 o'clock during a normal school year, with most of the tutoring happening from 3:30 to the 7:30 hour. Now with the school support, we're being flexible, in particular with the open hours. If a parent needs, you know, to start a little bit earlier than 9 o'clock, because there's a lot of schools that start before 9. Our centers are, you know, on alert to be able to create some flexibility related to that. Normal tutoring 3:30 to 7:30, 8:30.
Okay. And what, in terms of, you mentioned flexibility a number of times, does a parent have to, does this have to be a 5-day-a-week thing? Can it be a couple of days a week? Does it have to be a full day, a half day? Can it be a combination? Like, how do you guys approach in terms of customizing based on the needs of the individual, or is it kind of one standard kind of engagement model?
Right. So we have right now you can select from hourly all the way up to monthly if you want to. And just to give you some example, hourly, like I said, probably $15 to $20 an hour, depending on the service or the center that you go to. I don't think for school support that's the right approach. So we have 3-hour programs, 4-hour programs, and 7-hour programs that you can select also on daily, weekly, or monthly. The school support was really designed to help parents who need to work, right? Whether it's they have to physically go to work or they have to work from home. And we provide, most of the people we see right now are selecting the monthly package because, especially if they have a subsidy, it's a very inexpensive situation for a parent. And even if you have to miss a day or two, the world doesn't end, right? But we'll guarantee that you have a seat for your children.
Okay. And so you mentioned the $15 to $20 an hour. That's for generally is that for an employee that is going to be kind of this voluntary paying directly? What about in terms of if you have an employer who's willing or interested in subsidizing, some of the costs? Is there kind of a standard pricing for that, or is that more of a kind of a customized pricing given the size of the company, the number of the employees? Like, how do you guys approach that where an employer is interested in subsidizing a portion of the cost?
Right. So that's very customized. We work with each individual firm. From the big firms we're dealing with, like the Microsofts and the Bank of America, they're subsidizing 2/3, I think, of the total amount for their things, and it's all monthly plans, right? So that it's very concise. They're so big, you gotta make it so it's cookie cutter, so everybody can explain it and understand it. But when you talk about more of the regional firms that we're dealing with, it's run the gamut. There are some that have done things where they come to us for free, or no, I'm sorry, the employees come, pay the whole amount, and they put a certain amount on an expense report. There's another firm that are paying for the first 5 hours a week. So we'll work with you and customize if there's an interest in subsidizing the programs.
Okay. And I know you guys aren't, tax professionals, and I will caveat that, but there are there some potential tax benefits or considerations for employees? I know there's some questions around like FSA dollars and what they can be used for and whatnot, but generally speaking, I'm sure this is a question that comes up.
Right.
What are some things to keep in mind at, call it an employee level, around, ways to help offset some of this, some of this cost, maybe in a more tax advantaged way?
Yep. I wish I had better answer than I'm going to give you, because we're not aware of anything significant. We know there's a number of discussions ongoing around tutoring and school support where employees could potentially use flexible spending account dollars. Our relationship with Bright Horizons helps, I think, in that regard in some of the bigger companies. And the other discussion that's going on is the use of 529 funds that could be used for tutoring down the road. But to my knowledge, there's nothing that's been passed to date that would directly allow tax benefits related to tutoring.
Okay. And there's a number of questions that are coming up just around around costs, and obviously there's probably some inputs on whether that's weekly or monthly and so on and so forth. So just for everybody that's listening, some of the questions that have come up obviously around pricing, I think the answer is that there's kind of the employee pricing element, and there's the subsidy. So one of the things that we'll do as a follow up to this is make sure that everybody who's attending gets the information that they need to be able to connect with, John and Emily and their team. Right. If you want to explore this further. One of the other questions is just, locations around the country. And so how many states do you currently have?
I think we're in 49 of the 50 states. I think the only state we don't have a center is Maine. In the Baltimore area, we have 5 corporate-owned centers, so we control those. Emily does all her pilot programs and everything else in those centers, but they're located in Catonsville, Crofton, Bel Air, Timonium, and Columbia, here in this area.
And then many of the companies that are attending today, have more of a national footprint. So you guys have worked with your franchisees also to kind of collectively to be able to meet the needs of employers that have people around the country.
Yes, all of our franchisees have been trained on this service, and to the best of my knowledge, we have nobody that's opted out of providing the school support service. Obviously, the traditional services they all provide. If it's virtual that you're interested in, we'll handle that centralized. You won't have to necessarily go through a franchise location, and we have a team that will take the inbound calls, line you up with a tutor, and get you off and running. We have a marketplace also, like some of our competitors out there. It's an Uber type of thing. If you want to find a tutor, you can go to Sylvan In-Home. But for this type of service, what we're trying to do, especially if we're going to be working with employers, is we want to give you a concierge service. So instead of going through the marketplace, you're going to go through a team of people that will help you. They'll use the marketplace in the background, obviously, but for your employees, they would call in and get personalized service.
Okay. One of the questions that came up is, it looks like you guys have put together a bunch of kind of collateral and content and kind of best practices documents or tips documents. Is there some place where is that only if you kind of license the service, or do you guys have any information? Where can people go to learn more about, Sylvan and what you guys are doing? And do you have any, any resources or any content or anything like that people may be able to tap into or leverage?
Mm-hmm. you want to talk about Sylvan Nation, Emily?
Yeah. So Sylvan Nation is a website that we have put together with a ton of resources there. There are blog articles, tips, podcasts, articles not only that we've put together, but that we've curated from other places that we felt are really helpful. And so we've made it really kind of a one-stop shop for parents who are looking for resources for themselves and for their families. We even have downloadables that parents can use, worksheet pages, and all kinds of stuff. So I would definitely recommend Sylvan Nation to any parent who wants to kind of get their feet wet about what Sylvan is and who we are and what we do.
That's great.
And some of the tips on, that you talked about earlier are also up there on Sylvan Nation, correct?
Absolutely.
On how to set up a proper learning environment at home.
Right. And those tips are actually in a handout. I think that it's going to be going out to everyone in attendance today as well.
Right. No, that's great. And again,
if you're from the Baltimore area, you can see Emily. She's on Fox 45 quite regularly, talking about most of the topics today are about school support and virtual learning.
Right. Let me see. I think that for the most part is a lot of the questions that have come up. This has been really, really helpful. We're very appreciative for both of you taking the time just to kind of share some of these thoughts and solutions. I think it's as employers, we're all grasping for, and as individuals, but looking for ways to kind of cope and address the, this brave new world that we're in right now. And I commend you guys for what you guys have put together and seen a need and really pivoted a little bit and delivered a solution that aligns very much with the core of what you do, but in a way that can help. That can help companies help their people. So we appreciate that. There will be information as a follow-up that we'll be sending out to every attendee. Some of the information that John and Emily have provided us. We'll make sure that we can provide that to you to get you connected with Sylvan if this is something that you're interested in exploring for your company and for your people. And we've also got some of those best practices and tips that Emily talked about a little bit earlier. Some resources that she provided, and then we'll make sure to curate things like Sylvan Nation and some of these other resources in a follow-up for every attendee that you can go visit. So we appreciate your time today, and hope that this was valuable. And again, thank you to John and Emily from Sylvan Learning, and we appreciate your time. Hopefully this was helpful.
Josh, thank you. And I encourage anybody to reach out to us if they have any questions.
Will do. Thanks, everyone, and thanks to both of you.